There. Oh, hey, there he is.
All right. All right.
There it is.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. You're off and
All
running,
right.
and you look solid.
All right. Fantastic.
So I know that today is a day where you're doing media day and you're running around and trying to let everybody know what's going on about Decatur FC. So we figured we would take this opportunity to catch up with you and find out everything about Decatur FC.
Yeah.
Going back to last year, what did you learn as a franchise about yourself getting ready to be a franchise and the league and everything? What'd you learn last year?
So I think, one of the biggest things we probably learned is that, okay, we have something pretty sustainable here, right? We had a pretty big first year in 2024, and, we were, a little, certainly hopefully optimistic that, all the momentum we gained in 2024 would continue in 2025. Were we a one-hit wonder kind of thing? And obviously, our hope was confirmed. We had a huge and record turnouts in 2025. And so it really kind of let us know that, okay, we've got something here, right? And, we began to put better processes in place. We started to run it much more like a business than kind of more than just a handful of friends and volunteers trying to do something fun on the weekends. And so I think the biggest learning from last year was, all right, one, we're really good on the field. We were 8-0 last year, won the Southeastern Conference, #1 in the South, 3rd in the nation. That's been going fantastic. And then we started, kind of looking at it organizationally of, all right, how do we build kind of the front office and the staff and kind of run this more professionally than we did the first year.
Then I guess leaving 25, how much time did you give yourself to breathe before you started planning on 26? Or was it like a day and a half? You sit there and go, nope, we got a thing. We got to go. We got a boogie here. How much learning time did you give yourself to plan and start planning for 26, which starts on the field tomorrow?
Yeah. So I think it was, we did kind of initial debriefs for the next few weeks of, what did we do? How did it work? What can we apply next year? And, so we collected all that data. I mean, kind of the underside of these kind of leagues is, it's really hard to employ staff from a 12-month perspective, right? Just by nature of kind of the way the league is set up. And so, I maintained throughout the year and kind of built relationships with organizations and sponsorships and kind of did some of the planning as we went forward. And then we really get, this year we kind of had staff from March, April, May, and June, right? And so, but, it's a little bit of repeat and play, but also added, how can we do better? How can we build it bigger? How can we reach more people, better fan engagement, all of those kind of things we're always looking at.
When it comes to the WPSL, for someone who hasn't jumped in to see the product, how would you sit there and say, outside of what Decatur does, on the field, which is gangbusters, and if you go to a game at Decatur FC, basically you better go early because you got to find a place to park, and yep. That's a good problem to have, right, in downtown Decatur. How would you describe what sets the WPSL apart and at the same time makes it a part of a very successful ecosystem when it comes to soccer here in the U.S.?
So, the WPSL is growing. I mean, it's the oldest women's league in the country. There's 160 teams now. They are working very, very hard as an organization to not remain in kind of the tier 4 status. I think by 2028, we will see WPSL Pro in either tier 2 or tier 3. I think they're working with U.S. Soccer right now to figure that out. WPSL is doing everything they can to kind of complete that path on the women's soccer side. Right now you kind of, you leave college and you're either going to have to go to NWSL or USLS or go internationally, right? There's nothing much between that. And so the WPSL is working really hard to kind of help that path, right? And so is U.S. Soccer. Everybody is. And so I think that's part of what sets the WPSL aside from other leagues that are happening. I think from our perspective, we're just super lucky that we live in the city of Decatur, right? I mean, there's such a soccer craziness here, such a super high soccer intelligence. And I think that's what draws our fans to our game. The soccer on the field is great soccer. We do a lot of stuff around the event, from tailgating on the square to marches to the stadium. We put a lot of time and effort of, if I'm being completely honest, how do we replicate what Atlanta United does from a fan perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being welcomed into the stadium. How do we, live national anthem, opening ceremonies, certainly, you and Drew on our live stream broadcast. I mean, all of this kind of, helps us kind of create this excitement around the women's soccer in Decatur.
When you look at how things have grown and evolved, and you look at where Decatur FC is right now, has there been anything that has surprised you and the front office when it comes to either assembly of the franchise on the whole, getting the talent to come in so you can be that top team that is chasing after championships? Has there been something that either surprised you in a good way or a bad way? Was there a wake-up call along the way of, we got to really buckle down and do A, B, C, D, or E here so we can be as successful as we want? Have there been surprises, either good, bad, or both?
Yeah, I think there's probably been both, right? The success was a little bit of a surprise. Starting to run it like a business, and then I think there's a lot of learnings in that, right? So much of the first year was handshakes and thank yous, and we appreciate that. The second year we started getting into, all right, we should probably have an agreement with that sponsor, or we should probably have something more than a handshake from the athletic director or the superintendent of the school system and things like that. So we really spent a lot of time doing that. In the third year, it's just non-negotiable. All those things are in place, as we look kind of at the future and, what we want to do in the future. I think one of the hardest parts is when you talk to people in Decatur, there's so much excitement. Everybody knows about it. And we're starting to branch out a little beyond that. But when you start to get a bigger picture and start to try to get the bigger sponsors or reach out to a bigger fan base, it's hard. We're finding it much harder to get to kind of that big regional or small national sponsorship level.
Right.
They to some degree, because we're not a professional team, we're still looked at, oh, that's a really neat thing happening, with the girls team in Decatur.
Yeah.
And so, we spent a lot of time reaching out to people, a lot of time building the story around who we are and trying to convince them that, right now, I think we're second in attendance for all women's professional sports in Georgia, just behind the Dream on an average home game attendance basis, which is huge. And so trying to get that message through to bigger sponsors and bigger activations has been tougher than I would have anticipated.
And you're doing this with a target on your back on the field.
Mm-hmm.
How hard is it to keep the talent that you've assembled and found? And it's like, yeah, we want you to come back. And then, hey, this opportunity's over here. This opportunity's over here. Other teams from the WPSL might be sitting there going, ooh, we like that player. That might fit over here. Now with the reputation that you've set, it might be, as I would imagine, it's that much more difficult to find/retain the talent that you've got that got you to where you are.
Yeah. So I think from a recruiting perspective, one of the best things we have is, all of our players have had such a great experience with us that they go back to their colleges and they say, just played in front of 2,000 people. We signed autographs for 45 minutes after the game. We were treated very well. Coaching was fantastic. Athletic training was fantastic. Anything we needed, we were providing for them. And so their players are like, wow, that sounds great. I want to do that. Right. So, a lot of our players do our heavy lifting in recruiting. Obvious Coach Campbell and the players that play for him at GSA is a huge part of this. We right now, John, we have 5 generations of soccer players playing on Decatur FC on this team. For Decatur FC. So 5 generations of Georgia soccer players from 2003s to 2008s. And it's amazing. We have 14 returners. We have 3 graduating seniors who are coming back to play for us this summer. One of them who's got some great news we're going to share in the coming weeks, I think. And so So we're getting the talent back, and we're getting people reaching out to us all the time. We're even getting a handful of players from some of the other teams in the local area who will now come and play for us. What I will tell you, though, what's happened in the past 2 years, and we're seeing it across all of our teams, Georgia Impact, AFU, UFA, we are raising the bar and they are meeting it. I mean, the players that they're getting right now are big time players as well. And so there's going to be some great competition this summer. And I'll show you the best example of that. When we went to put schedules together this season, because some of our conference realignment, no one will schedule games, until after June, because everybody, if you lose once, you're probably not going to win the conference championship. And so everyone's like, we need that extra week and a half for practice. And so, everybody is really focused on winning in a high level of competition. So it's fantastic. It's good for everybody. It's good for us. It's good for the league and for the fans.
What is is there such a thing as a WPSL owners front office meeting, or is it kind of virtual, or how does that work?
So we meet we actually met in Dallas this year. Typically it's been in Oklahoma where the league headquarters is. Okay. And we meet once a year. We talk about from a league perspective of, learnings from other teams. How can we do this better? How can we all do this kind of new guidelines and things like that. We talk a lot about what's happening in the NCAA and how that impacts our league towards the end of the season. And then we all sit, it's kind of old school. We all literally sit around a table with pens and papers and create a schedule. All the teams sit at one table and you kind of knock it out, and that's how it goes. So.
Is it literally like 100? Well, it might not be 160 considering your region and everything, but when you have your all hands on deck, is it literally like 160 people in a room or in a conference center and sharing ideas or anything like that? How big are we talking here?
Oh, I mean, it's more than 160. I mean, it's got to be 200 or 300 folks. And,
wow.
And I mean, look, they do an incredible job. The WPSL, I mean, they just understand women's soccer and building this league. We have great speakers from U.S. Soccer coming in, talking about what's happening in U.S. Soccer, what they're doing to build a better path for women's soccer. It's fantastic. I mean, the leadership of the WPSL is fantastic.
Because the reason I ask is I didn't know what the sharing of ideas was like. Obviously, in this particular footprint where you have all of these teams chasing after championships, and that is the stated goal, is that you are going to, knock each other around and prove that this is one of the toughest regions in the country. I didn't know if there was still, sharing of ideas outside of this footprint with the other owners and things like that to go, well, so you're successful here. What are you doing? I didn't know how deep those conversations went outside the Southeastern United States. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, no, they definitely do within the WPSL, but I'll even take it out of the confines of that. I mean, I spend a lot of my days reaching out to other teams who what I feel are 2 or 3 years ahead of us in the cycle, John. Like, talking to their GMs, tell me what I don't know. Tell me what you wish you knew 2 years ago. So, I'm trying to lower that learning curve and for our team and our staff, and everybody has been fantastic. I've never met anybody, to be honest with you, that I've asked a question to and said, yeah, that's our secret sauce. I'm not telling you. And we try to replicate that with anybody that reaches out to us. And what I would say is specifically in the Southeast Conference, it doesn't matter what team, like we all want this to be big, and we can have those conversations offline and phone calls and emails, and then really save, kind of the competition for the field and things like that. Everybody knows if we can get better soccer and better, more fans of the game, it's good for everybody.
All right, lay out game day for me, because it's going to be everything that we've been discussing. It is going to be from O'Sullivan's. Everybody marches downhill. Hopefully you might have parked downhill, because after the match and you've got to go back uphill to where you parked. That man is a quarter mile that, after a hot match and you being a fan out there, that walk back up toward the courthouse, that can get to you. Lay it out for everybody where it comes to Decatur FC and what game day is going to be like tomorrow.
Yeah, so we're excited, and we're equally optimistic that all the rain will hold off for us. We're going to have an incredible game against Tennessee United. So we'll start on the square. About 5 people will start tailgating on the square. Activities with the kids and some stuff. And then right around, oh, all right, there we go. Oh,
Yeah, there you are.
All right, right around 6:15-ish, we'll start doing some chant practice, and then 6:30 we'll start the walk to the stadium, and opening ceremonies at 7. We have some live national anthem singers. We use a lot of the children from our Path to the Pitch program, our Wednesday Night Light program. They'll come and do player escorts and walk out with the players. It's just going to be a great night. And two things, I would tell you that, this is kind of the interesting thing that happens with Decatur FC. I would say, I think last year the stat was somewhere between 70 and 80% of all of our fans walk to the game. I mean, it's very European, right? Mm-hmm. So they're so close. They'll come to the square, they'll walk to the game, they'll walk back. I think we'd all tell you it's worth the walk back up the hill to go back to O'Sullivan's and maybe grab some more refreshment.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, so that's a huge stat for us, that walkability of Decatur and everything. And so it's an exciting game. There's definitely going to be some great soccer tomorrow night. Tennessee United is a new team to the WPSL. They don't actually start in the league until next year, but they do have a team this year in preparation for it. And so they had reached out asking if we would have a friendly with them. And so obviously, again, just like we talked about, we want to support everybody who's trying to be in the WPSL and support women's soccer. So.
Yep, and the BLTs are deadly at O'Sullivan's. I will vouch for that.
Yeah, I spend way too much time in O'Sullivan's at this point in my life. So yes.
It's as always, when the season kicks off, it's always great to see you, my friend, and break things down. Like I said, I know media days today, and there will be media that will be mediated when it comes to getting ready for the season. So Drew and I will be with you tomorrow, and it'll be great to see you then. Have a great media day, and we'll catch up with you on a Friday, sir. Good to see you.
Thanks so much for all you do for Decatur FC, John. Really appreciate it.
There we go. That's Joel Gould. He's the GM, and he's going to go properly hydrate now. Probably get some breakfast, something at O'Sullivan, something breakfasty. It's going to be like 9,000 calories.